Hello everybody. Today our lesson is about how to teach math. And this is one of the most challenging things for teachers, teaching math, how to teach math and how to teach science. And it's mainly because teachers are intimidated about these topics because they feel that they don't have the knowledge. But in reality, these are some of your more easy subjects to teach because you get to use a lot of hands-on and manipulatives, you get to do interesting experiments and things along that line. So don't be intimidated about the idea of teaching math. As a matter of fact, I would encourage you to think that after you learn what's in this chapter and in this lesson, this will probably be your strongest area of teaching, or one of them. Now, before we start on how to teach math, though, I want to remind you of something, and that is that you always want to start your class with something interesting. You want to do this for a couple of reasons. One, it gives students a reason to show up for class on time, and it's easier to have them show up on time than punish them for being late. When you punish students for showing up late, the first thing you're doing when they get to your class is putting a negative on them, and that's not going to make them want to get there more. So you want to start your class with something interesting. And you also want to do something that hopefully gets their attention on the lesson that you're going to teach. Now, notice when I keep telling you this, I'm using a couple of principles of good teaching. I've told you this almost every class, or I've done it almost every class, which means I'm modeling what it is I'm telling you to do. The other thing is I'm doing it over and over and over. That's called distributed learning. Eventually, it will just get to be a part of your habit that you do things along this line. And it will help to promote maintenance. In other words, the idea that you remember this over time, the fact that I'm hammering this topic over and over will help you to remember it longer, and it will also help you to generalize it to other different types of situations. So, the way we're going to try and make this class interesting is I want you to click on the link that you see here, and it's a little bit of something that I think you'll enjoy, but what I don't want you to do is get so absorbed in it that you don't come back to class afterwards and just keep following what's going on there. Watch one link, one thing, and then get back to this. Okay, so click on the link now, and when you're done, come right back to class because I've got even better stuff for you coming up. Okay, now that you're back, I want you to notice something here. What we had was a song 4 or 5 Seconds by Rihanna, Kanye West, and Paul McCartney, who for you guys that are about 4 or 5 seconds old may not know this, but he was one of the original members of the Beatles, and he probably has enough money to buy out both Kanye West and Rihanna. The guy's just incredibly wealthy. If you want to get really good at math, try and count all Lord Paul McCartney, Sir Paul McCartney, try and count all of his money. But anyway, getting on to the topic of math, notice how this lesson oriented you. It gave you the concepts of time, it had different numbers in, and because of that, it oriented you to the lesson of math. So that's your good start for one way that I can use for you guys to try and get your attention on this class, is provide you with something that should be interesting to you, because frankly, if you don't like this song, you got bad taste in music, okay? It's a decent song. Now, I want to provide you with something else here also though, and this is something that you were going to find interesting if you have about 25 minutes to watch it. But even if you don't want to watch it right now, watch it later. Click on the first link, and it's going to take you to something that is, I believe, actually older than I am, which is more than 4 or 5 seconds. I'm way older than 4 or 5 seconds, okay? And this is something that not only will you enjoy, but your students will love it. And they're going to love it so much, and we stress so much teaching with students that speak other languages. I'm also going to present you with 2 other links. And one is to see the same thing in Spanish, as you'll see by the stereotypical image of Donald Duck in a sombrero, or one with Donald Trump wearing what I hope is a French-looking hat, because we're going to have the same video for you spoken in French. So take a few minutes and watch that, at least start it. And if you don't have time to watch the whole thing right now, save it for later, come back to it, because you really will enjoy it. And it's appropriate for almost any grade level. And then come back to this, okay? Now, hopefully I've given you a couple of good resources, or a couple of good ideas already in this class about things that you can do. But the bulk of your content is going to come out of your book, again, because this is just a really outstanding book, and this is one of the most useful sections on it for you. I tell you that again because of the fact that so many people are intimidated by the idea of teaching math. So what I want to do is give you a few key concepts that you'll always have to remember when you're trying to teach math. And the first one is, look in the back of your book and you'll notice they have scope and sequence lists. Math is one of those subjects where students absolutely have to learn things in order. You cannot do calculus before you learn how to multiply. And you can't multiply until you learn how to add, because multiplication is repeated addition. Your scope and sequence list will tell you the exact order in which you want to teach skills. So that's an important thing to do. Also, it's important that you teach your kids how to do operations. There are 4 operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. But it's important that you have them memorize their basic math facts. 1 plus 2, 2 plus 3. In other words, 1 plus is whatever, up to 10 plus 10. The same with addition, subtraction, and multiplication. There aren't that many, and there's a lot of good ways that you can drill and practice these math facts, but you want students to memorize them, because in order to do anything more advanced, that has to be automatic. So anybody that tells you it's not important to memorize anything in school is mistaken on this one issue, or I at least, if they're not mistaken, I sincerely disagree with them, okay? The other thing you have to do is teach kids the basic structures of math, and that includes the properties: associative, commutative, distributive, and there's a couple more. If you take a look at the link, it's going to take you to a website that will show you about these different properties. You also have to teach children the structures of regrouping, how to regroup, how to borrow, how to add, when you're dealing with numbers that need to regroup, whether it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. Now, you each probably learned one way to perform basic operations, and that's called an algorithm, but the fact is there are more than one way to do any of the operations. And this next link, if you'll click on it, will take you to a page that has PowerPoints on different ways of doing different algorithms, okay? Now, this third thing is a really critical component. I've told you before, you don't give homework for something unless students have already learned it, because the homework is to reinforce skills. Well, in the same way, when you're teaching math, you start by working with concrete things, manipulatives. You help children to develop concepts by moving things around. You might give them dominoes and have them add 2 dominoes to 3 dominoes to get 5 dominoes. From there, you're going to move to symbolic, and you're going to have students learn the concept further or internalize it further by using perhaps tally marks or circles or whatever, but they're going to actually draw things to enhance the concept. Working with numerals like you do on homework worksheets is the last step. That is abstract. So first you want to engage the students in understanding what they're doing, and then you make it abstract by practicing with numerals and working actual problems just using numerals so that it becomes automatic again, okay? Another critical point when you're teaching math, and I think you could all agree on this, is we get a great deal, as human beings, we get a great deal of pleasure of overcoming challenges. You know, if we get a challenge that's just at the right level, we really feel good when we've overcome that. I still remember the first time I broke a 4-minute mile running, and you know, after months and months, well, maybe it was only a couple of weeks of training, but to get to that 4-minute mile, it was really a struggle for me. The same thing with the first time when I dunked a basketball. You know, I'd practiced for hours and hours before I could dunk a basketball. I was like 3rd grade at the time. It was one of my first big accomplishments, and I got that overwhelming feeling of success that made me want to continue with my athletic skills and developing them. Well, likewise, we want to teach kids math on a level where it's challenging for them, but they're able to overcome the challenge, because you get such a good feeling in that regard when you're able to overcome a challenge. Okay, if we put math lessons at a level that is too difficult for our students, not only are they not going to be able to succeed, they're going to hate doing math. So what we want to do is give them stuff that's just a little tough. It's at that Goldilocks level. What you're going to hear on your certification test, they'll probably call it the zone of proximal development. It's one of Vygotsky's terms. That's where you want to teach your math. So make sure you know what they're able to do and start at the scope and sequence level right there or right above it, just where they're just not quite able to do it independently, and you help them until they're able to do it independently, okay? Also, make your drill and practice fun. I taught kids in a prison how to memorize their math facts by playing football. I made a football field. I gave the students dice. One kid would roll the dice for the offense, another kid would roll the dice for the defense, they'd multiply. So if you rolled the dice and you got a 3 and a 6 for the offense, that was 18 yards. Then the defense rolled, they got a 3 and a 2, that was 6 yards, they subtracted and it was a 12-yard game. So I had 2 kids playing football and a third kid with a calculator so that I could sit around and do whatever it is I do when I'm supposed to be working, okay? That way 3 kids got a lot of drill and practice without going through the boredom of doing worksheets. Now when they had their times tables memorized through the 6s, then I gave them spinners that went up to 10s. Same principle, we made it a game. There's a lot of games that you can play. You can play trash ball where you wad up a piece of paper and you have kids stand back, and the further back they throw it, the more points they get trying to get that wadded up paper into a garbage can. Don't do this until you have good classroom management skills. But what you can do is make the problems more difficult to move the kid further from the basket and worth more points. You can take them outside and do the same thing with baseball where you have bases and a kid tries a difficult question that's worth a double. He tries a simple question that's worth a single. Then you have a kid on the defense try and do a question to see if he can throw them out. You can play all sorts of games with index cards where you make index cards with problems on them, decimals on them. For example, you could have .250 and .330 and have kids play war. You make a deck of all different index cards with all different decimals, and whoever flips over the higher one gets the cards, and they play back and forth to compare decimals. Obviously, you could do the same with fractions. You could have multiplication problems on index cards. 3 times 3 on one card, 7 times 8 on another card. When those 2 cards come up, the kid with 7 times 8 gets the other kid's card. So you can do all sorts of things like that. You can put problems on index cards like 7 times 3 on one card and 21 on another. Now you're going to make a bunch of different ones, but then you put them face down and have kids flip them over so they're playing a game of concentration. When they get the problem that matches the answer, they get the cards. You can play math bingo. The number of games that you can come up with is really, really limited, only by your imagination. That's the only thing that limits it. And you really only need to have kids doing worksheets. Like I said before, school's not to be a punishment for children, and the object's not to make them work. It's to make them learn. So you do need to teach kids that they also have to have self-discipline, so use worksheets to teach that. But make learning fun for your students, okay? Now, there are also very many computer games that you can use in your classroom for drill or practice, or give to your kids or their parents so the kids can practice at home. And I'm going to give you 3 of them. There are links to 3 of them up here. If you want to click on each of those links and then come back and check on the others, you'll find that they have all kinds of games that kids can play on the computers to practice their drill at all different skill levels, okay? So that's another thing. And if you don't like the ones I've given you, just get on your computer and Google math games, and you'll come up with all kinds of stuff. Okay. Go through your book, look at the games, look at the activities, the self-correcting materials, things that kids can do without you being directly involved, and really use this as a resource. This is a very good chapter, and I can tell you, if you paid $3 for this book, it's the best $3 you've ever spent in your life. And if you paid $150 for the book, it's a good $150 because this book, as a resource in your classroom, will be good for a long time. So look that over very carefully and keep this book always. I couldn't tell you how many copies of this book I've had stolen from me, or I've given away maybe and forgotten I gave them away and then accused somebody of stealing it later when I saw them with it. Kind of guy I am. But this is really a good book, so use it for this chapter and look at the games and the activities and think of how you can adapt them for you. Now the last thing I want to do is I want to draw you back to the video that we saw at the very beginning with Rihanna and Kanye West and Paul McCartney, who has that huge mountain of money and probably has his very own castle over there in England. And I want to remind you, one of the sentences is they talk about don't confuse kindness for weakness. And that's good as far as your classroom management. You want to always be nice to your kids, but not weak. Nice to your students, but not weak. But I bring this out in math because what you don't want to do is confuse your students' frustration for misbehavior. When your students become frustrated because they're having trouble with math and they act out, recognize that for what it is. It's a cry for help. It's an opportunity to teach the child a better way to ask for help. But it's not a kid being bad. It's a kid that, if he was at the right level, as we talked about before, would be getting a great level of satisfaction out of learning how to do math. I think that's about what I have to tell you about how to teach math. Keep an eye on being good at anything is only as important as being good at all of the fundamentals of it. So learn the basics of how to teach math. Come up with a good repertoire of games. If you create your own games, do them well and save them so that you have them for the future. And enjoy this week's lesson. And hopefully this will become one of your very favorite subjects to learn or to teach. Because if you enjoy teaching it, your students will also enjoy learning it. As always, if you have a problem or if you have a question, give me a holler. And I gotta tell you, I'm enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying these videos. I'm enjoying making them. I'm actually today wearing shorts and a t-shirt while I'm making this video. That's my idea, the way to make a living. Call me if you got a problem, or better yet, email me, because then I don't have to try and search for your phone number if I get a message. And as always, I will get back to you promptly. Bye. Have a great week.